Story disclaimer. This story is a work of fiction and is intended for entertainment purposes only. The content includes dark themes, horror elements, and fictional depictions of rituals and sacrifices that are purely imaginative and not reflective of any real-life practices or beliefs. Viewer discretion is advised. This video is not suitable for younger audiences, and parental guidance is recommended. The story does not endorse or promote any harmful behavior, violence, or dangerous activities. Please note that all characters, events, and settings are entirely fictional and created for the purpose of storytelling. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or actual events, is purely coincidental. In a world shrouded in darkness, Nia and Tunde face trials that push them beyond their limits, with only an ancient amulet and cryptic tome to guide them. Haunted by spectral protectors, plagued by their deepest fears, and battling the enigmatic power of the abyss, they must confront not only shadowy foes but the echoes of their pasts. Each step into the unknown tests their unity and resolve. Will they master the ancient secrets in time, or will the abyss consume them? This journey promises revelations, heart-pounding suspense, and a fight where courage and trust are their only weapons. Stay till the end to witness their fate. Nia kept running until her legs gave out beneath her. She fell onto the ground, her chest heaving with exhaustion. The dark forest that surrounded the outskirts of Kisa was dense and foreboding, its twisted branches casting eerie shadows in the moonlight. She was alone now, but that didn't mean she was safe. The speaker of the abyss was still out there, hunting her. And now, she had no one to guide her. Nia glanced at the mark on her ankle. The glow had faded, but the burn still lingered. The woman had said the mark was both a weapon and a curse, but Nia didn't know how to control it, how to use it without being consumed by it. A rustling sound nearby made her freeze. She held her breath, listening intently. The bushes trembled, and a figure stepped into the clearing. It was a man, no older than 28 years old, with wide, curious eyes and a wild mop of hair. He wore simple, ragged clothes, and he carried a small wooden staff, which he held tightly in his hand. "Who are you?" Nia asked, her voice weary. The man didn't answer at first. He just stared at her, his eyes flicking to the mark on her ankle. After a long silence, he finally spoke. "You're the one they've been talking about, aren't you? The girl with the mark." Nia's heart skipped a beat. "How do you know about that?" The man stepped closer, his gaze never leaving her ankle. "The mark is known to those who listen. My father told me stories about it, about the one who would come to fight the darkness." Nia frowned. "Your father?" The man nodded. "He was part of the cult before he ran away. He said they were evil, that they wanted to use the mark for something terrible. He tried to stop them, but they found him." Nia's stomach twisted. "They took him?" The man's face darkened, and he looked away. "He tried to help me, but I've been running ever since. I've been waiting for someone like you." Nia's mind raced. Could this man help her? Could he lead her to others who knew how to fight the cult? She had no other options, no other leads. She had to trust him. "Nia," she said, extending her hand. The man hesitated for a moment, then took her hand. "I'm Tunde." As their hands touched, the mark on Nia's ankle flared to life, glowing brighter than ever before. Tunde gasped and jumped back, his eyes wide with fear. "It's reacting," he whispered. "That means they're close." Nia's heart pounded. She had no time to rest, no time to think. The darkness was closing in, and they had to move fast. Nia and Tunde moved quickly through the dense forest, their footsteps soft on the ground. The trees above seemed to twist and bend in unnatural ways, their dark branches reaching down like claws. Nia felt a constant chill, as if the forest itself was watching them. Every step forward was met with a sense of unease that grew heavier. "We are not alone," Nia whispered, glancing over her shoulder. Tunde nodded, his wide eyes scanning the forest. "They are close. I can feel it." As they continued deeper into the woods, the air grew colder. Suddenly, a sharp gust of wind sent leaves swirling around them, and a figure emerged from the shadows, a man draped in tattered robes, his face hidden beneath a hood. His presence was suffocating, as though the darkness itself bent to his will. Nia's heart raced. She could feel the mark on her ankle burn again, reacting to the figure's presence. "Who are you?" she demanded, though her voice wavered with fear. The figure said nothing at first, simply standing there as though waiting for something. Finally, his voice came out like a low growl. "You carry the mark, and you think you can run from your fate." Nia clenched her fists. She could feel the power stirring inside her, but she wasn't sure she could control it. "I don't know what you want, but I won't let you have it." The man tilted his head, a slow, deliberate movement. "You don't understand, child. You belong to the darkness now. The mark binds you to the abyss." Tunde stepped forward, raising his wooden staff, but the figure laughed, a deep, hollow sound. With a flick of his hand, the ground beneath Tunde shifted, making him to fall. "Tunde!" Nia shouted, rushing toward him. The shadow figure raised his hand again, and Nia felt a sudden force slam into her body, throwing her back into the trees. She gasped for breath, her body aching from the impact. As she tried to stand, she felt the mark on her ankle glow brighter, pulsing with a fierce energy. "Fight it, Nia!" Tunde cried, his voice strained as he struggled against the shadowy tendrils. Nia gritted her teeth. The darkness was overwhelming, but she couldn't let it take her. She had to resist. Focusing on the burning energy inside her, she tried to control it, to channel it into something she could use. The figure moved closer, his voice a soft whisper. "You can't escape the abyss. It's inside you. It will consume you." Nia screamed as the mark on her ankle flared with light, a bright glow cutting through the darkness. The shadowy tendrils around Tunde dissolved, and he scrambled to his feet, running to Nia's side. The figure staggered back, his hood slipping slightly to reveal empty black eyes. "Impossible." Nia stood, her heart pounding. She didn't know how she had done it, but the power inside her had responded. She had pushed the darkness back, at least for now. The figure hissed, his form fading into the shadows. "This isn't over, child. You cannot run forever." And with that, he disappeared, leaving Nia and Tunde standing alone in the silent forest. The relief of escaping the figure was short-lived. Nia could feel the weight of the darkness pressing in again, heavier than before. The encounter had drained her, and now, the very air around her seemed to throb with danger. "We need to keep moving," Tunde said, pulling Nia to her feet. "He'll be back, and next time, he won't come alone." Nia nodded, her legs shaky but her resolve firm. "We have to find a way to stop him, before he finds us again." As they pressed on through the forest, the trees began to thin, revealing a narrow path leading down into a dark valley. In the distance, Nia could see strange flickering lights, like fire, but not quite. Tunde hesitated. "That's the abyss." Nia's heart skipped a beat. She had heard whispers about the abyss, the dark heart of the city's cult. It was said to be a place where the lines between reality and nightmares blurred, where the cult's power was strongest. "We have no choice," Nia said, her voice trembling slightly. "We have to face it." They descended into the valley, the strange lights growing brighter. As they neared, Nia realized they weren't flames at all, but something far more disturbing, figures made of light, their faces unrecognizable. They hovered above the ground, flickering and fading like figures trapped between worlds. Tunde gripped Nia's arm. These are the souls bound to the abyss. They were once like us, caught in the cult's web of darkness. Now, they are lost. Nia felt a shiver run down her spine. We need to find our way through. As they walked deeper into the valley, the lights followed them, their worried faces whispering incomprehensible words. The air grew thick with an overwhelming sense of despair, as though the ground itself was alive with the cries of those who had been consumed by the abyss. Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath their feet, and a deep, rumbling sound echoed from the far end of the valley. A massive shadow rose from the earth, towering over them. Its form was indistinct, shifting and swirling like smoke, but its eyes, two glowing orbs of pure darkness, pierced through the gloom. Nia and Tunde froze, fear gripping their hearts. The creature didn't speak, but its presence alone was enough to send waves of terror crashing through them. "This is the abyss," Tunde whispered. "It's not just a place, it's alive." Nia's mark burned hotter than ever, and she could feel the power inside her building, ready to explode. But she didn't know if she could control it, not in the face of something so massive, so powerful. "We need to run," Nia said, her voice shaking. But the creature had already begun to move, its massive shadowy form closing in on them. There was no escape now. The abyss had found them. The immense shadow loomed over Nia and Tunde, its dark presence causing the air around them to grow even colder. The whispers from the flickering figures seemed to intensify, their voices a constant, eerie murmur that seeped into their minds. "We can't stay here," Tunde said, his voice nearly lost in the growing cacophony of whispers. "We have to find a way out before it overwhelms us." Nia nodded, her heart pounding. She could feel the power within her reacting to the overwhelming darkness, a force she could barely control. She focused on keeping her thoughts clear, but the constant whispers were disorienting, as if they were trying to drive her mad. They stumbled along the path, which seemed to shift and twist, leading them deeper into the abyss. The whispering figures seemed to follow them, their faces constantly changing, reflecting their fears and anxieties. At one point, Nia thought she saw a face she recognized, a young woman from her past, smiling at her with a sadness that felt all too familiar. But as soon as she tried to reach out, the face vanished, replaced by another, even more sad. "Don't look too closely," Tunde warned. "The abyss shows you what you fear the most. It uses your own thoughts against you." Nia tried to block out the whispers and images, focusing on the path ahead. But the shadows seemed to close in around them, pressing in with a suffocating weight. Just when she thought she couldn't bear it any longer, they came across a strange, ancient structure in the middle of the valley, a crumbling stone archway with symbols etched into its surface. The symbols glowed faintly, casting a soft, otherworldly light. Tunde approached the archway, his eyes wide with recognition. "This is a gateway. It's supposed to lead to a place of refuge, a place where the abyss's influence is weaker." Nia felt a flicker of hope. "How do we activate it?" Tunde examined the symbols closely. "We need to speak the words of the ancient spell that binds it." "But I don't know the words." Nia's mind raced. She remembered an old tale her grandmother had told her, a story about an ancient gateway and a spell that could activate it. She closed her eyes and began to recite the words she could remember, her voice steady despite the growing chaos around them. As she spoke, the archway began to shimmer, the symbols glowing brighter. The shadows around them seemed to retreat, their whispers growing fainter. The ancient gateway was working, creating a small haven within the darkness. Tunde looked at Nia with a mixture of relief and awe. "You did it. We have a chance to escape." They stepped through the archway, leaving the abyss behind. On the other side, they found themselves in a different place, an ethereal realm of mist and faint light. The air here was still and calm, a stark contrast to the oppressive darkness they had just left. Nia and Tunde looked around, trying to get their bearings. The mist swirled around them, and the light seemed to dance just out of reach, creating an almost dreamlike atmosphere. "It's not over," Nia said, her voice echoing in the stillness. "We've escaped one danger, but we still need to find a way to stop the cult." Tunde nodded. "There must be clues here. The ancient gateway might have brought us to a place where we can find answers." As they ventured further into the misty realm, they began to see faint, glowing symbols on the ground, leading them deeper into the unknown. The symbols seemed to form a path, guiding them toward what they hoped would be a way to understand and ultimately defeat the darkness they faced. Nia and Tunde followed the glowing symbols through the misty realm, the ethereal light casting strange and shifting shadows on the ground. The path led them to an enormous, ancient structure, an immense labyrinth made of shimmering, translucent walls that seemed to shift and change with every step. "This must be the labyrinth of reflections," Tunde said, awe and apprehension in his voice. "It's said to hold the secrets of the abyss and how to defeat it." Nia took a deep breath, feeling a renewed sense of determination. "Then let's find those secrets." As they entered the labyrinth, the walls of the maze seemed to close in, their reflections multiplying in the translucent surfaces. The labyrinth was a maze of endless corridors, with each turn revealing more walls that seemed to reflect their every move. "This place is disorienting," Nia said, trying to keep her bearings. "It feels like it's playing tricks on us." Tunde nodded, his eyes scanning the labyrinth's ever-shifting walls. "We have to stay focused. The answers we seek are here, but we need to navigate the labyrinth without getting lost." The farther they went, the more the reflections seemed to change. They saw not only their own reflections but also shadowy figures, some of which seemed to mimic their movements. It was as though the labyrinth was testing them, showing them distorted versions of their fears and doubts. At one point, Nia saw a reflection of herself, not as she was now but as she had been in the past, young and scared, standing in a dark room. The image reached out to her, its eyes filled with tears. "Don't look at it," Tunde called out, noticing Nia's distress. "It's a trick. The labyrinth feeds on your fears." Nia shook her head, trying to clear her mind. "We have to keep going." They pressed on, their resolve strengthening with every step. As they reached the center of the labyrinth, they found a large, circular chamber filled with symbols and ancient writings. In the center of the chamber was a pedestal with an ancient tome resting on it. Tunde approached the tome, his eyes filled with wonder. "This must be it. The knowledge we need to understand the abyss and how to defeat it." Nia stood back, allowing Tunde to examine the tome. The chamber was quiet, the only sound being the faint hum of energy that seemed to emanate from the ancient text. As Tunde opened the tome, the pages seemed to glow with a soft, golden light. The symbols and writings were unlike anything Nia had ever seen, but Tunde's eyes were fixed on them with an intense focus. "This is incredible," Tunde said, turning to Nia. "It describes the nature of the abyss, its power, and how to counteract it." Nia felt a surge of hope. "What does it say?" Tunde began to read aloud, his voice steady and confident. "It speaks of a way to channel the power of the abyss, to transform its dark energy into something that can be used to combat it. It's complex, but it's our best chance." As they continued reading, the labyrinth's walls seemed to shift, as if the very structure was reacting to the tome's revelations. The reflections on the walls grew clearer, revealing glimpses of their past and future. The labyrinth was no longer just a maze but a reflection of their journey, their struggles, and their hope. Nia and Tunde knew their path was far from over, but with the knowledge they had gained, they felt more prepared than ever to face the darkness that lay ahead. With the ancient tome in hand, Nia and Tunde exited the labyrinth of reflections. The mist around them had thickened, and the once faint light now seemed to pulse with a rhythm of its own. Every step felt heavier, as though the very air was charged with an oppressive energy. As they made their way out of the labyrinth, Nia noticed the landscape around them shifting. The mist grew denser, and the glowing symbols on the ground began to waver and blur. The ethereal realm they had entered seemed to be warping, the path ahead becoming less certain with every step. "We need to find a safe place to study the tome," Tunde said, his voice echoing with concern. "The abyss is reacting to what we've discovered." Suddenly, the mist coalesced into forms, dark, amorphous shapes that seemed to writhe and twist as if in pain. The shapes began to move toward them, their movements erratic and unpredictable. "Stay back," Nia shouted, raising her hand. She could feel the power within her flaring again, but she wasn't sure how to control it. The dark shapes hesitated, then advanced, their forms distorting into hauntingly familiar figures, visions of Nia and Tunde's past. Nia saw her own reflection again, but this time it was not a distant memory, it was her standing in her old home, looking lost and abandoned. "Is this what you wanted to see?" the vision of her younger self whispered. "Your old fears. The failures you've tried to forget?" Nia felt a pang of anguish, her heart aching at the sight. She tried to push the vision away, but the more she fought it, the stronger it seemed to grow. Tunde was battling his own torment. He saw his younger self, struggling with the guilt of a mistake he had made long ago. The image was so vivid that Tunde could almost feel the old emotions flooding back. "We have to confront this," Tunde said through gritted teeth. "It's trying to break us down." Nia nodded, struggling to focus on the tome. "We need to use what we've learned. We can't let it control us." She began to read aloud from the tome, her voice steady despite the turmoil around them. The ancient words seemed to resonate with the mist, causing the dark shapes to recoil. Slowly, the mist began to clear, revealing a pathway that had been obscured. As they followed the path, the visions began to fade, though the echoes of their past lingered in their minds. The oppressive weight of despair was lifting, but they knew the danger was not over. The path led them to a small, secluded grove. Here, the mist was lighter, and the air felt less oppressive. They decided to rest and examine the tome in more detail. "According to this," Tunde said, pointing to a passage, "we need to perform a ritual to harness the power of the abyss. It involves aligning the energies we've collected with a specific artifact." Nia looked at the tome with renewed determination. "What artifact?" Tunde scanned the page. "It doesn't specify, but it mentions something about an ancient relic hidden in the city of Kisa. It's supposed to be a key to controlling the abyss." Nia's heart raced. "Then we need to get to Kisa as quickly as possible." They packed up and set off, the grove disappearing behind them. The journey ahead promised more challenges, but with the knowledge from the tome and their resolve strengthened by overcoming their fears, Nia and Tunde were ready to face whatever lay ahead. The journey to Kisa was fraught with tension. The city, known for its vibrant markets and bustling streets, seemed eerily quiet as Nia and Tunde approached. The usual hustle and bustle of the city had been replaced by an unsettling silence. As they entered Kisa, they followed the clues from the tome, leading them to an old, forgotten part of the city. The buildings here were ancient, their once grand facades now crumbling and overgrown with vines. It was as if they had stepped back in time. According to the tome, Tunde said, the relic should be hidden in an old temple here. It's supposed to be well guarded by the city's ancient protectors. They found the temple, a decrepit structure, its entrance obscured by thick foliage. As they pushed through the overgrown entrance, they were greeted by a vast, dimly lit chamber. The walls were adorned with faded murals depicting ancient rituals and mythical beings. In the center of the chamber was a pedestal, upon which rested an ornate box covered in intricate carvings. The box was surrounded by faintly glowing symbols, a sign that it was indeed the artifact they sought. "This must be it," Nia said, approaching the pedestal. Tunde hesitated. "We need to be cautious. The relic might be protected by ancient spells or traps." Nia nodded, carefully inspecting the box. The carving seemed to tell a story, one of power and sacrifice. As she reached out to touch the box, the chamber was filled with a sudden gust of cold wind, and the symbols on the ground began to glow more brightly. From the shadows emerged spectral figures, ancient protectors who seemed to rise from the walls themselves. Their eyes glowed with a cold than earthly light, and their presence was accompanied by a low, mournful chant. "You seek the relic," one of the figures intoned. "But are you prepared for the trials it demands?" Nia and Tunde stood their ground, determination in their eyes. "We need it to stop the abyss," Nia said. "We are ready." The spectral protectors circled around them, their chant growing louder. The air was thick with a sense of foreboding. Each step they took seemed to echo with a deeper, more ominous resonance. One of the figures stepped forward, its form more defined than the others. "To claim the relic, you must prove your worth. You must face the shadows of your past and present." The chamber began to shift, the walls and floor warping as if reacting to the protector's words. The spectral figures closed in, their eyes piercing through Nia and Tunde. "This is a test," Tunde said, his voice steady. "We have to face it together." As they prepared for the challenge ahead, the chamber seemed to pulse with an ancient, rhythmic energy. The shadows around them grew darker and more intense, creating a labyrinth of shifting darkness that tested their resolve. Nia and Tunde knew that to succeed, they would have to confront not only the physical trials but also the deeper, darker fears that the relic's guardians would bring to the surface. The spectral protector's presence weighed heavily on Nia and Tunde as they stood before the ornate box. The chamber seemed to expand and contract with every breath they took, the very walls vibrating with a low, mournful hum. The leader of the protectors spoke, its voice echoing with an eerie resonance. "You will face 3 trials to prove your worth. Each trial will test your inner strength and resolve. Only by overcoming them can you claim the relic." Nia and Tunde braced themselves. The first trial began as the chamber's shadows swirled and thickened, transforming into a dense fog that obscured their vision. The air grew heavy, making it hard to breathe. The fog seemed alive, whispering and tugging at their senses. Suddenly, the fog parted to reveal a series of mirrors floating in midair. Each mirror reflected not only their physical appearances but also deeper, darker aspects of their psyche. Nia saw herself standing alone in a vast, desolate wasteland, her face etched with despair. "Is this what you fear?" the reflection asked, its voice a chilling echo of her own. "Being abandoned and forgotten." Tunde's reflection showed him standing in front of a building, helpless and watching as everything he cared about get destroyed. "You've always feared losing everything," the reflection taunted. "Will you let this fear control you?" The mirrors shifted, showing even more disturbing images, moments of weakness and regret that neither had faced before. Each image seemed to reach into their deepest insecurities, amplifying their fears. "We have to focus," Tunde said, his voice strained but determined. "These illusions are meant to break us. We need to overcome them." Nia nodded, taking a deep breath. She closed her eyes and concentrated on her inner strength, pushing away the haunting images. "We've faced our fears before. We can do it again." As she opened her eyes, she saw that the mirrors were cracking, their reflections shattering into shards. The fog began to clear, revealing a new path through the chamber. The spectral protectors watched silently, their eyes glowing with approval. "Your first trial is complete," the leader intoned. "But remember, the remaining trials will be even more challenging." Nia and Tunde proceeded cautiously through the now clear path, their minds still reeling from the intense illusions. They knew that the trials ahead would only grow more difficult. The path led them to another chamber, this one vast and echoing. The walls were lined with strange, glowing symbols that pulsed rhythmically, casting shifting shadows that danced around them. In the center of the chamber stood a large, intricately designed archway. As Nia and Tunde approached, they heard a low, droning hum emanating from the archway. The sound seemed to vibrate through their bodies, creating a sense of unease. The spectral protectors reappeared, their forms flickering in and out of existence. "This is the echo chamber," one of them explained. "Here, you will face the echoes of your past actions and their consequences." As they entered the archway, the room seemed to expand into a labyrinth of corridors lined with more mirrors. These mirrors reflected not just their appearances but also scenes from their past, moments of joy, regret, then sorrow, each replaying in annoying detail. Nia saw a vision of her childhood home, her parents arguing bitterly. The scene was painful, reminding her of the family conflicts she had tried to forget. The echoes of their arguments filled the air, growing louder and more intense. Tan's vision was equally distressing. He saw himself in a boardroom, making a decision that had devastating consequences for his colleagues. The echoes of their disappointment and sadness reverberated through the chamber, overwhelming him with guilt. "This isn't real," Nia said, trying to stay focused. "We have to accept our past and move forward." Tan struggled to push past the echoing voices. "It's hard to let go of the past, especially when it haunts you like this." They took deep breaths and concentrated on the task at hand. As they faced their past, the echoes began to fade. The archway's hum grew louder, guiding them through the labyrinth. The chamber started to shift, the walls rearranging to form a clear path. Finally, they emerged from the echo chamber, their minds exhausted but their resolve strengthened. The spectral protectors nodded in approval. "Your second trial is complete," the leader said. "One final trial remains. Prepare yourselves." The final trial awaited them in a chamber that seemed to stretch into an endless void. The floor was a deep, swirling abyss, with dark clouds and crackling energy swirling beneath them. The air was charged with a palpable tension, and the atmosphere was heavy with anticipation. The spectral protectors led them to the edge of the abyss. "This is the abyssal rift," one of them explained. "To complete your trial, you must cross the rift and face the ultimate test of your strength and unity." Nia and Tunde looked at the rift with a mix of fear and determination. There was no visible bridge or way across, the only thing they had was their resolve. "Remember," Tunde said, "we have to trust in ourselves and each other." They took a deep breath and stepped forward. As they did, the rift seemed to react, the swirling energy below becoming more chaotic. The ground beneath them shifted, creating an unstable path. Suddenly, the rift seemed to open up, revealing a series of dark, spectral figures that surged toward them. These figures were the manifestations of their deepest fears, each one more terrifying than the last. Nia and Tunde had to navigate the unstable path while battling the spectral figures. The figures attacked with illusions and psychological tricks, trying to destabilize them. Nia saw sad visions of herself failing in her quest, while Tunde faced the shadows of his own insecurities. Through sheer determination and teamwork, they managed to fight off the spectral figures, their combined strength overcoming the illusions. They moved steadily across the rift, their focus unshaken by the chaos around them. As they reached the other side, the rift began to close, sealing off the abyss and the dark figures. The chamber started to stabilize, the swirling energy calming. The spectral protectors appeared once more, their forms glowing with approval. "You have faced the ultimate trial and proved your worth. The relic is now yours." With the final trial complete, Nia and Tunde approached the pedestal, the ornate box now fully revealed. They had faced their fears, overcome their past, and battled the darkest aspects of themselves. The relic was finally within their grasp. Nia and Tunde stood before the ornate box, the air around them crackling with a sense of anticipation. The spectral protectors had vanished, leaving them alone with their prize. "Let's see what's inside," Nia said, her hands trembling slightly as she reached for the box. As she opened it, a soft, golden light poured out, illuminating the chamber. Inside the box was an ancient artifact, a beautifully crafted amulet adorned with intricate symbols. It radiated a calming energy that contrasted sharply with the dark trials they had faced. "This must be the key," Tunde said, his eyes wide with wonder. The tome mentioned that this amulet could help us control the abyss. Nia took the amulet and felt its warmth spread through her. It was as if the artifact was resonating with her own inner power, amplifying her abilities. "We need to find out how to use it," Nia said. "The tome might have more information." They quickly reviewed the tome again, looking for any details about the amulet. The ancient text described how the amulet could channel and transform the dark energy of the abyss, turning it into a force for healing and protection. "It says we need to perform a ritual to activate the amulet," Tunde explained. "We have to align its power with the energy of the abyss." Nia nodded, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. "We need to return to the abyss and perform the ritual. It's the only way to stop the cult and end the threat." They left the chamber with the amulet in hand, ready to face the final stages of their quest. The trials had tested their limits, but they were now equipped with the means to confront the darkness and bring an end to the cult's machinations. Nia and Tunde returned to the abyss, their path guided by the amulet's faint glow. The once oppressive darkness now seemed to part before them, as if acknowledging their new power. The abyss had changed, the energy around them more volatile and chaotic. The dark shapes and whispers were more intense, a sign that the final confrontation was near. "We need to find the heart of the abyss," Tunde said, his voice resolute. "That's where we'll perform the ritual." They navigated through the shifting shadows, following the amulet's guidance. The energy around them grew more intense, the whispers and shapes becoming more aggressive. Finally, they reached the heart of the abyss, a massive, swirling vortex of dark energy. The vortex pulsed with a rhythm that seemed to sync with their own heartbeat. Nia and Tunde set up the ritual according to the tome's instructions. They placed the amulet at the center of the vortex and began the incantation. The chamber resonated with the ancient words, the energy of the abyss reacting to the ritual. As they chanted, the dark energy of the abyss began to coalesce around the amulet. The vortex's chaotic energy was drawn into the artifact, its power being transformed and contained. The process was intense and draining. The energy of the abyss fought back, resisting the ritual. Shadows lashed out, and the very air seemed to warp with the struggle. But Nia and Tunde pressed on, their voices steady. With the abyss subdued and the amulet's power harnessed, Nia and Tunde emerged from the darkness. The city of Kisa was bathed in the first light of dawn, its streets now peaceful and calm. They had successfully thwarted the cult's plans and ended the threat of the abyss. The amulet, now a symbol of their victory, was a testament to their courage and determination. As they walked through the city, they saw signs of change. The once dark and oppressive atmosphere had lifted, replaced by a sense of renewal and hope. "We did it," Tunde said, looking around with a sense of fulfillment. "We've brought peace." Nia smiled, her heart lightened by the success of their quest. "And we've made sure the abyss can never threaten anyone again." The relic was safely stored away, its power now a safeguard against future threats. Nia and Tunde knew that their journey had come to an end, but their story would be remembered as a tale of bravery and resilience. As they left Kisa, the sun rising behind them, they felt a sense of accomplishment and closure. The trials had been arduous, but they had emerged stronger and more unified. The world was a safer place, and their story would serve as a reminder of the strength found in facing one's darkest fears and the power of unity in overcoming even the greatest challenges.